What's up, guys? Jamar Dawson here, episode number 14 of the Off My Chest show. So glad to have you guys with us today. Today, we'll be talking with an amazing woman who's a dynamic singer slash songwriter, church leader, and youth influencer. She is Beth Moore. Beth, welcome to the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Most definitely. So, Beth, you are the first music artist that we've ever had on the show. And so I've been like super excited all week. I just like, man, this is the first woman, first music artist. This is going to be great.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know. Insane, right? But yeah, super excited. But before we go into the most recent music that you've released, I wanted to talk briefly about just how you got here, your journey, specifically what drew you to music in the first place?
Yeah. Yeah. I try not to sound like basic or like someone, that's like, I grew up. I just, as a child, a baby, I like was drawn to music, but I was fortunate to grow up in a family that was very musically like well-rounded and was
Yeah.
constantly either playing an instrument or like my dad, who's from England, he kind of really came over to the States because of music
Wow.
and ministry, those kind of going hand in hand. But yeah, he was constantly writing music and performing it and leading worship and just all these different things. As I was a kid, I would hear about him, just songwriting and doing things in Nashville and just things like that. And my mom is also, I kind of get my dabbling side from my mom.
Yeah.
She's able to kind of do a lot of things. There's little that intimidates her. And so
Yeah.
I would see her be able to just jump on a piano and play or jump on a guitar and play and sing and harmonize with my dad. And I was like, oh, I love that. But as
Wow.
a kid, I shied away. I would do anything, in front of the crowd at church. I would be on the dance praise team. I would, go do things in the kids, but I really would not sing. That felt like a personal thing. It felt like, oh, that's the one thing that's just for me, because my parents are pastors. So
Yeah.
growing up in the church, you're like, all right, so everything is everybody's. So what's mine? And I'm the only girl in my family. So I was inspired by my family to pursue music, but when it came down to it as a kid, I was like, this is mine. This is my
Yeah.
like time.
Okay. That's pretty could. So I guess that was kind of the moment that you realized that this isn't just like a passion, but this is like a calling.
I would say honestly, when I got older and I started noticing that music became a common theme in like bridging me to other people,
Yeah.
more than just, wow, I like that artist, you like that artist. But I would notice that I would be in spaces that I didn't announce myself as a singer,
Yeah.
but I would find myself singing in front of people, or I'd find myself engaging in music and just like someone's playing a guitar and they ask me to sing, thinking I might just want to. And it would turn into this whole thing. Like I
Yeah.
specifically remember a time when I was 20 years old and I went to Mexico City with like a bunch of influencers off of social media. We had never met before. And I remember wanting to be very low key, because when
Yeah.
you're around social media influencers, everything is like up here. And I knew, I was like, I don't think many of them are believers either. So I was like, let me just, let me not play into, it was 2016. It was a very politically charged time,
Yeah.
like it always is. And I just remember being like, okay, they probably have a lot of conceptions about Christians. Let me be super chill. And God had very different thoughts of how that trip would go. And I remember people would just like find me, like they would seek me out
Yeah.
and ask me about my faith. They would ask me all these things. And then it slowly turned into people asking me to sing, or like asking me to share songs I've written, or asking me to like sing songs specifically about God. And I was like, here I am trying to be low key. And God's like, nope, everyone's hungry. Let's do it. So
Okay.
that was honestly like when I switched of like, maybe this isn't just like a therapeutic thing for me. Like,
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. That's pretty cool. Always like to find out the moment that a person realized, hey, this is what I was born to do. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
And some people hadn't found it yet, but it looks like at a relatively younger age, some of the seeds were planted,
yeah, the
and then
seeds.
like the
Yeah, for
harvest
sure.
really was generated in your early 20s. So that's pretty dope.
Yeah.
That's pretty dope. Now, fast forwarding to the present, as we mentioned before, you've released a single, released a music video. Make sure all you guys go and check out her stuff on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. give her that thumbs up button, all that good stuff. But it's definitely a different type of a sound. I didn't know what to expect, but it's very different. It has ethereal elements, some background stuff, of course, some acoustic. I love it. It's great in all the good ways. Give us this scoop on the meaning behind the song.
Yeah. So one, thank you. It was definitely not my idea for the first song outside of this EP that I had in mind of the first one that I would release. It felt
Yeah.
very like it was the last song I wrote on the EP. It was more of a challenge to get out of my comfort zone. So for it to be like the very first thing that people hear from me, I never would have thought that that's the song I would have went to. But
Yeah.
when we got into the studio and we were working on things, it was like, let's start here. And I was like,
Yeah.
interesting. And I now looking back and just seeing how honestly the Lord just kind of led all of that, I'm now so glad that that was the first thing people heard, because the whole EP is kind of my journey of, I would say 2018 to 2020.
Yeah.
It was a very pivotal growth season for my life, which I'm sure we'll probably get into. And it was a lot of hard. And it was me wanting to make tangible some things that felt very intangible.
Mm.
And I was like, maybe if I am able to write and process these things, that even if somebody hasn't gone through specifically what I've gone through, they're able to kind of relate with the emotions behind it, or maybe the questions that they have in their faith and
Yeah.
all these things. And I was looking and I was like, man, all these songs are really hard or very like deep feelings. And I was like, and I know that there's more to the story. And so it kind of came from that of like, I'm missing a part of my story. And a part of my story is really just the faithfulness of God of like, wow, I expect things, I disappoint, like I face disappointment,
Yeah.
and that might harden me or make me jaded towards life. And as a 25-year-old now, it's
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, if I were to become jaded or become like, I assume I already know what life's going to be.
Yeah.
This is how life's going to be. Nothing can be transformed. No one can be different. No one can like, change the world kind of vibe. It really just challenged me, because I was like, I know that I have hope because I have Jesus.
Yeah.
And all of these are kind of stating the issues when I don't have him, or what I face when it's not a reality, or what doesn't seem like a reality. And I was like, what if I wrote a song that was more like happy and more of like a love song and more of like what it would be like for me when I come into the fruition of everything I had faith for. Like,
Yeah.
oh, now I'm seeing that you exceed my expectations. Like, I was actually just dreaming too little, or the things about me, I'm like, the song doesn't excuse it. Like in the verses, I'm very upfront of like, I have every right to think that life would just be this way. Right.
Yeah.
And I can see a lot of people coming into their seasons of life. I'm dead. My dog. I can see a lot of people coming into their seasons of life saying like, God validates, the hurt and the hard.
Yeah.
And he also offers hope, not like well, let's hurry up and get out of that hard feeling,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
in a way of like, let's keep moving forward.
Yeah.
That surprised me, is very much my like forward thinking song, not a manifestation, but like a faith forward song of, I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living.
Mm.
Because I have seen it. I'm seeing it in ways now. I know he will be faithful.
That's good. That's real good.
Mm.
And just listening to you talk, it's more than just a surface level faith that I could hear, and anybody who hears you talk can really extract from. But just to kind of go along with that, you are a worship leader at the church that I happen to go to, and shameless plug, City Heart Church here in Jackson, Flowwood area, metropolitan area. Come check it out. We live stream, but we also are in person live. But yeah, you and I are on the worship team together. And guys, she's an amazing worship leader. If you like her songs, but you've never heard her as a worship leader, you need to come or tune in. She is just as good, if not better. I don't know what she would say, but she's not just an amazing artist. I know, however, those two worlds are very different. How do you balance being a worship leader and doing that world and then being an artist at the same time?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because it really feels murky or weird. I would say to navigate making like worship music your full-time creative outlet.
Yeah.
I would say I want to always point people to God, and I always want to, I just do it from the avenue of like showing my humanity first. I think I spend, in my own personal writing, it's very like, all right, this is my testimony, and hope you see, the Lord in it all. Like I've seen the Lord in it all. But I also know that there's room for even the songs that I've written, where they're just exalting, like the whole time. I think there's a level of when I'm in a place of leading worship. Worship's a lifestyle, but when I'm in a place of like leading it corporately, there's a level of like, okay, I just want to be as genuine as possible and come in however I'm at, and meeting the Lord and just offering up this time and it being sacred and holy. But there's a level of dissonance because the songs I'm singing, I didn't write them. I might be able to relate to them, and I definitely want to believe everything I'm saying. But I know it's different when you like write a worship song and then you lead it and you're like, oh my gosh, this is like, which is kind of what our team is leaning towards, which I think is just awesome and wonderful. But there's another layer of vulnerability. And so for me, it was like, man, I can't not write about God. He's like in everything that I do. And so I knew kind of creatively going in a direction that maybe I'm not meant to be sung in a church, but I'm meant to be sung in your room and have it playing and almost like setting a posture that leads you to a deeper place.
That's good.
But it's definitely, I would say I don't, when I'm worshiping the Lord at church, it's not like a performative aspect. Or I'd hope not, whereas like, shooting my music video for Surprise Me, I was like, okay, this is out of my element. Like it's me singing to a camera, a song that feels like out of my diary, so definitely different, but I see God in all of it.
Okay. That's dope. That's dope. Now, from what I've researched, you've been singing and writing for a while, and even you touched on it, how you've had early childhood influences. I even heard through the grapevine that you are on the songwriting team for Maverick City Music, which is awesome and amazing. And it seems though, I've dug and looked, and I looked to your Facebook page. Your YouTube page. There's only one video on there. I can't find any other stuff of Bethany Moore. Maybe I'm not looking in the right place. Why did it take you? Basically, why'd you go the proverbial scenic route to release your own music, even though you've been involved in music for a very long time?
2020 in all of its hard and ugly and mystery, right? That's the funny part of it. It came after a time in my life when I felt very isolated, and it caused me to reflect on what felt like fragility a little bit of life. I think I always came into this thought of there's so much noise in the world. Like, why would I make noise? And I mean, there are people, that are 16 and they like release songs and they're like heard by the whole world. And I'm like, that's awesome. I, however, was like doing things and building relationships and just doing a lot of stuff. And I knew I had a lot to say, but I didn't know how to say it. And I think it took me time to build confidence when it came to writing. And so 2020 rolled around and I got plugged in with Maverick City Music. And that's when I really started co-writing a lot. And it was in those co-writing spaces that I realized like, maybe like it's hard and it takes a lot from you, but it also is very life-giving. And I saw that tension, and I saw how like, I was like, maybe I'm not as trash as I might think I am, and it honestly, it just, if anything, it boosted my confidence to begin like using 2020 in that isolation period to just really write. So I've written a lot of songs in my definition of a lot, but I would say all of these songs were written in 2020, which is funny. So
wow.
Yeah.
One thing that I've seen, that God sometimes does, that I've seen from the Bible and in real life or in modern day, is that he often develops us on a backside of a mountain. If you look at the story of Moses, I mean, that dude was one of the most insecure folks. He even volunteered his brother to be the speaker for him. But his formative years weren't in Egypt. They were away in the wilderness somewhere with with just a few folks and a bunch of goats and stuff like that. And it helped to shape who he was. And there's so many other folks that are like that in the Bible and that I see in modern day. And it's just powerful how your story kind of reflects of one of being in isolation. And, some people, I think they get into either music or whatever they're at too soon. But
Yeah.
it's awesome to see your patience. And I think that the maturity when you hear your single, it's like, wow, like this sounds like someone who's like a veteran of the game. So this is her first single. So
I'm
I
working
think
with veterans.
that's cool. So kind of to switch gears a little bit, in addition to you being a worship leader and a music artist and all those wonderful things, you're also a leader in the youth ministry. How in the world
Yeah.
did you get involved with that?
Yeah, short version. I think one, I was passionate about it. So I think I go looking for it because I noticed when I was 15 or 16, that was when I was really like wanting to be led. and that's like a rare thing in a lot of teenagers or like, like someone lead me, someone teach me. But I was coming into my own with my faith, and I was seeing all these people just share and I was just hungry for it when they were honest and they were open. And I think it started because I saw the ways that need was met and that need wasn't met.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do differently. And I feel like it just was established as a pillar of faith. So I established it when I became an adult. And so in college, I became a young life leader and just really valued mentorship and worked in South Jackson with actually Bryce, who goes to our church.
Yeah.
So we met there. And then later down the road, we're like, oh, wow. And now we're both working in the youth ministry at the church. But I've always just had just a passion and a desire, knowing how pivotal and how you can really capture people during that time and you can really lose people during that time.
Yeah.
Because it's just so noisy, and especially with this next generation,
Yeah.
or just this one happening right now, there's so much noise, and not like adding to it, but really just being a space while they construct or deconstruct or whatever. It's like a home base to always come back to. I think it's just so important. So it really came to talking to someone, telling them what I'm passionate about, and they're like, we have a need. And I'm like, got it, I'll fill that, So here we are.
That's dope. And you kind of touched on it, but I haven't been a youth for a very long time. Like, gosh, it pained me to think about it, but like the late 90s, early 2000s was when like I was in youth group last. So I don't know how it is, I felt like things were just so hard in life back then. But would you say that things are at a different level now with youth as you're dealing with them than they were 10, 15, 20 years ago? Like, how does that compare, like what you went through as a youth versus what these youth are going through?
Yeah, I think something we've been talking a lot about is influence, because you have the influencers everywhere. I think it can lead you to believe that you are being discipled in a sense. To where you don't need any other voices. You choose and you get to curate the voices that you hear. But it's a false sense, right? Like it's very like fabricated, and then it's given to you, versus seeing someone like very raw and very genuinely living out their faith and living out and we look at disciples, we look at Jesus, they saw it all. Like they saw the man healing, but they also saw the man that needed to sleep and needed to like clean his feet after a long day of travel. And I think that part is often missed out of this generation because we just have so much access that it's, well, what could you give me? And you're only one person, and I would rather just get all the best parts of everyone. Yeah. But then we realize we learn in the failure. Like we learn in the mess ups. And if I'm not there to see it, and they're not going to show it to me, because who wants to show that? Then I feel like when I mess up, I'm an alien. There's something wrong with me. God's disappointed in me. And it leads into like what feels like a deeper isolation, a deeper sense of loneliness, which I think can be a huge cause for so much depression and anxiety and all these things. And so you think knowing more would give you more control, and that's just such a lie, So it's really navigating that alongside people and showing up and fighting to be a voice in a sense, but fighting more to just be a presence that
Yeah.
is in it and out of it in whatever season.
Okay. That's pretty powerful. Now, do you feel that you and your level of influence to these kids being a youth leader has any connection with you as an artist or connection to your music in any way?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think when I'm writing or when I'm piecing a story together, I'm always thinking of what does this benefit
Yeah.
anyone, right? Like it can't I struggle with it can't just be my diary. Like it can't just be and this is what I went through and this is one emotion and I really like to think about the artists that I grew up listening to that were maybe not bluntly on K-Love, but they were Christian artists that wrote about their experiences. And when I
Yeah.
look back, I'm like, those specifically women, like those women formed a lot of my theology in a very passive and positive way. And
Yeah.
they would talk about how hard it was to see God, but yet they still chose him.
Yeah.
And that it was like ingrained in me. And I got to listen to them because their sound didn't sound like everyone else.
Yeah.
It was unique. And it was like, I remember this one Puerto Rican artist that was Christian. She was huge in Japan. So I had her live in Japan CD. But I remember she was on MTV,
Yeah.
but never got put on like a Christian thing. But yet everything was about Jesus. And I was
Yeah.
like, and I just would like low key religiously listen to her. And I was just so influenced by her to the point that now when I'm going through things, I'll remember a lyric from her song in early 2000s, 90s. And I'm like, that it just blows my mind. And so for me, I'm like, if there's anything, it's not to be like so vague that you're like, is that about God or a boy? Like, what
Yeah.
is that? But to be just as unique and creative as I can
Yeah.
in the way that I express things, in the way that I'm influenced
Yeah.
to ultimately kind of encourage people like God meets us in our humanity. It's
Yeah.
and in that mystery of it all, we all get to engage kind of differently, but there is some like universal themes that we can all cling to.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, so definitely when I'm writing, I'm thinking about the 13-year-old in my youth group. I'm like,
Yeah.
will this benefit her?
Yeah. Okay. Now, speaking of impacts, I've heard you mention on a couple of occasions that you had a pretty scary health issue, scare, whatever you want to call it, in
Yeah.
college or so. Maybe that's what you're talking about, 2018. Um,
Mm.
if you are comfortable sharing, can you talk about that experience?
Yeah. So I for the sake of time, I finished school in 2018 in the fall,
Okay.
and it was a very hard season. And I was like, you know what? I have a job that I just accepted that takes me traveling throughout the spring and the summer. So you know what? I'm just gonna take a break. I'm gonna get my last 3-ish hours of school when the summer ends. And so I started, that was the end of 2018, started 2019 doing the job and fast forward to the summer around July 4th. I was leading a team of around 30 college students through like Virginia, Georgia. We were putting on day camps of like 500 kids
Yeah.
and beyond. And so it's a nonprofit out of Chick-fil-A called Winship Camps. And so I was working with them, and college students, really people in general, are very needy. And so, and I knew what I was signing up for. I knew like, I'm going to think about myself like fifth, not
Yeah.
necessarily first. And so, yeah, just so much need and there was so much going on, and it didn't hit me until maybe 4th of July. And when I look back, there was signs before then, there was definitely like, that's weird. That's interesting, happening in my body. But I mean, sometimes you're like, life is weird. Our body reacts to when we're stressed. I'm always stressed.
Yeah.
But 4th of July, I remember we were watching Stranger Things, and I was like, let me Google while we're all just sitting here funly talking. I'm gonna Google some symptoms, which is never a good thing. But in this
Yeah.
case, it would have actually warned me. But I remember Googling and seeing like some big words. And I was like, okay, this is why we don't Google. And so I was like, let me just send a picture to my mom. And it's so funny because looking back, I still have that picture, and I very much so looked like 3 months pregnant. And at the time, I was relatively healthy. I was 23 years old. It was just so weird. And I was like, something's happening. I need to change my diet. Like that was worst case scenario. And it wasn't until, so that was 4th of July. It wasn't until maybe 2 weeks later. I happened to take a staffer to like an urgent care.
Yeah.
And I texted my point person and I was like, hey, so I'm just going to get checked out. I don't really feel great. He's like, oh my gosh, get checked out. And that day I did some tests. And then the next day I got some tests with a gynecologist. And she called me back at work and she's like, hey, Bethany, you know, and her name was Bethany. We're actually still friends. She was a believer. And she calls me and she's like, so there's a tumor the size of a volleyball that's taking up your abdomen and it's engulfed your ovary, your left ovary. And obviously we won't know till we run tests and we kind of maybe even do surgery, honestly. But it looks like ovarian cancer. And I was like, what? And looking back, when I Googled ovarian cancer, first thing that pops up. But your brain is like, Google always goes the worst case, you know?
Yeah.
So I skip over that and I keep going because cancer does not run in my family.
Yeah.
I don't have a gene for the cancer gene, which I found out, you know, later because you take a lot of tests. And I just remember saying, okay, you know. And she was like, okay, so I actually want to call someone I know in Richmond because I was very close to Virginia. I was in it. She's like, I'm gonna call and get you in for surgery. And I was like, well, I have work for a couple more weeks. I just had no context. Yeah. So she literally is like, okay, so we're gonna call your mother. We're gonna call somebody else. And it wasn't until my mom got on the phone and I heard my mom cry. I was like, okay, this is kind of sinking in. And so a week later, I was in surgery. I got an old-fashioned C-section that was a lot. I was like, ooh, blessed be the people in the past who had to do that. And I was kind of in bed rest for a couple weeks. And then the next few months, I went 3 rounds of chemo and ended up doing that back at home, close to Memphis, Tennessee. Moved back in with my parents at 23. This semester, I thought I was going to be in school. Did not do that. And yeah, I just went through a very big changing season. I also was going through a break and it was kind of ironically funny, honestly. It was like, whoa, I also had a dog die. It was like,
oh man.
We love this. So again, a lot of content to process when 2020 hits and it's a pandemic, you know?
Yeah.
So I had just started, so I accepted the church job before cancer happens. One of the first people I call is my pastor. And I'm like, I know God said I was supposed to work here, but whoa, you know, before I had any answers. And so that was just so, I knew it was intentional that I accepted that job, had that relationship, because I really didn't tell a lot of people for a period of time until I was almost done is when I actually told people. Pretty much my family and maybe a few friends knew. And I love to say during the time I said this, and I still say it as much as I can to just kind of like be grateful and be thankful. But I mean, during seasons of like being in the fire, it's very easy to look at all the things that burnt off and grieve that and be so on it. It can be depressing at all the things, right? But then it's also fire, you know, gold's made in fire. So there were a lot of things that were solidified in my life. And I think that was kind of a big wake up call, because I still go to the doctor every 3 months. I still get all these things. Ovarian cancer doesn't have a great survival rate because most people get it when they're older and they catch it really late. And so for me, being the health and age I was, even though I was like, wow, if it had gotten worse, but again, I was so just not aware of myself at that season. So I'm just so grateful to the Lord. But yeah, it definitely just pushed me to be like, you know what? Because during that time, I was like, God, I just remember specifically being like, okay, look, I'll do whatever you say. Like, I'm not exempt from having cancer. No one's exempt. It doesn't care about your gender, race, socioeconomic status. It just happens. And it's not because God hates me or whatever. I'm like, but the thing I can't understand is like why I feel like I have dreams or promises inside of me. And now I feel like, for what? So I could die in a month, or so I could, which feels very heavy and like whatever. But I remember just having this piece of, if you haven't seen it come to pass, then I'm not done. And I can't go against my word. So those things, I'm not contradicting. So if you hold on to me, I'll hold on to you. So even before we had answers, like how much did it spread? Did it, because it was so weird. And, you know, and you're learning new language as these experts are looking at you with really all they can do is just, okay, you know? And that was when the Lord was just like, you will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. And it might not, sometimes we only see in part. So he could accomplish all those promises in a month. He could.
Yeah.
But it was just that piece of those promises and those things that you have inside of you that were spoken by me will be brought into completion. And I think about that song, the God is doing a great work, or whatever. That song would just pop up. I'm like, he that has begun. I'm like, you better. So yeah, I love it. But yeah, that was my long, short version of it. But
that's incredible. I thought that you had like a very small tumor, like, so I had no idea it was all that. I probably wouldn't have put down to ask the question the way that I did if I would have known it was all. I had no idea. Okay. So thank you for sharing. But yeah, I mean, I think that's, encouraging to folks who either maybe listening that have dealt with cancer or tumors or have a loved one that, until it's over, it's not over.
It's not over.
And I think just you showing how to fight is going to influence a lot of other people, how to fight, and especially Christians to, hey man, you might have to fight with folded hands, but and on your knees. There
might be 3 of you. Yeah. I'm learning. I'm like, we think we want 5 million people to like our status on Facebook.
Yeah.
But in actuality, when it's those seasons, you need the both end of like people to sit with you in the hard and people to like keep perspective. And looking back, I'm like, I think I might have had 300 followers. I had 4 people that I felt comfortable enough to call.
Yeah.
And that just says a lot, It just says a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, similar to an earlier question, how do you feel like this experience has impacted you as you make music?
I like to think that I can't guide people through a place I've never been. And sometimes I wonder, because it feels like a blimp in people's lives. Like, oh yeah, that thing happened to you in 2019, Yeah. And for me, I'm like, oh, I have scars. My hair is different. Like I look like a completely different person. I have, a different community, a different pace, almost like a different zeal for life. And so I feel very changed. And I would say it comes into this, like, there's no naivety when I'm singing about what I know about God and what I know, what I expect out of him. Or in 2018, God really challenged the slot machine God that I thought, like, I did A, B, and C. So you owe me X, Y, and Z, He really challenged that. And I'm so glad he did before, because then I would have been like, whoa, I did all these things in your name and you gave me cancer,
Yeah.
But just knowing the Redeemer of all things, knowing how, man, he just offers so much to a very like dying and hopeless world, And I saw how much he loved people when he would I interacted with people I never thought I would ever interact with. And coming from someone that my family really didn't go to the doctor,
Yeah.
I've had so many broken bones and that probably was it. And then to be in hospitals and engaging with people that felt like because of that, I had authority to speak.
Yeah.
And I was like, if it was only for those 3-4 people that I got to, for 10 seconds, that they probably don't remember, right? For me to just encourage them, and they felt like, okay, you can encourage me because you have authority. Yeah. Maybe it was like that. That's everything. And so for me, it's inviting. I think in my writing or just in music, I want to invite people to be more hungry for, like, not like, let me live however I want to live. And then eventually maybe I'll understand God. So let me put off these questions. Let me put off these hard things. Yeah. Let me put off these dreams, because eventually I'll get my stuff together and then I'll do yada, yada. Yeah. I want to invite people wherever they're at to like engage, you know, and
Yeah.
engage in what might not feel very comfortable and might be hard, but is so worth it because we're both in the eternal and the now. And
Yeah.
eternity is just now perpetuated. So if
That's
we
right.
don't pursue freedom, if we don't pursue goodness and holiness and all these things now, what makes us think that we're just magically gonna
Yeah.
engage with it forever? And so that's kind of a long answer, but I would say it's just caused me to not it has a negative side is you don't want to waste any time.
Yeah.
Like there's that part of you that's like, okay, you have this fear of wasting time, or you have this fear of wasting the like, because it is really hard. I've had several friends and family members who have died from family members, meaning like family in the faith,
Yeah.
died from cancer. And I have people that are now walking through cancer that I've met through my journey. And there's that part of me that's like, God, why would you like grant me a way out and then me walk in depression, or
Yeah.
me walk through something that doesn't feel life-giving, John 10:10, and like the abundance, right? How I define what abundant life looks like, you know? And I've had, that's been the tension of like, wow, I want to do so much, but
Yeah.
also, wow, I kind of just want to shrink back and not do
Yeah.
anything. It's just, it's so funny. So my
Yeah.
hope is to continue to press into that when it doesn't make sense,
Yeah.
and when it would just be easier to tap out.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. That's powerful. I like that perspective. Now, we certainly enjoyed having you on today. This show is called Off My Chest. So I would be remiss if I didn't give you an opportunity to do that. It doesn't have to be about music. It can be about anything you just want to leave with the audience today. The platform is yours.
Yeah, I saw how I'm like, wait, he talked about politics, he talked about these things. And I'm like, if I were to give something off my chest, it would be some time. Um, I think in a short version, as short as I can get, lately I would say I wrestle with the tension of being in a multi-generational church, of caring about multi-generational thought and how God set up the church and
Yeah.
set up community living, and also wrestling with the good and the negative of my generation of um, we because we have access to so much, we believe there's nothing left to learn. And
Mm,
once I know an information or I read one article, I understand everything.
yeah.
And you cannot, and it's not, there's not as many bridge builders. It's more right or wrong.
Yeah.
And I want to be right. And I have to, I wrestle with, I want to be right too. That's why I want to learn and know. But there's also that bigger part of me that's like, but ultimately more than that, I should want to bridge, and I should
Yeah.
want to, and especially as the believer. And so the past couple of weeks have been a lot. I would say a week and a half of just, I grew up with context of Israel and context of everything going on, because we celebrated a lot and we were advocates in a lot of ways, and because scripture and because we would go on mission trips and things like that. And
Yeah.
but I also had the privilege and the room to forget anything's happening, because I don't live in a war zone in that
Right.
way.
Right.
And so it's in these last few weeks that I'm like, God, that part of me that's looking at people that I follow, that I respect so much. And I know at the end of the day, they just want to love people, and
Yeah.
they don't want to miss it. They don't want to hindsight, look back and say, wow, I didn't say anything, or I said
Yeah.
too much, or
Yeah.
whatever. And so we just like every second that we have information. And
Yeah.
yeah, these past couple of weeks have just been, I feel like, soaking in all of that,
Yeah.
and wanting to step away and be like, God, I know you're in this. So where are you in this? And I'm not trying to be silent on the things that I don't have authority in,
Yeah.
but I'm also like, yeah, dude, sometimes I started the debate club at my high school. Like I can get in, but that doesn't mean I should. That doesn't mean it's needed. That doesn't mean
Mm,
that benefits people
yeah.
in Gaza and so many things. And I'll say this, like I was challenged by my mom. She was sharing about some stories that she's hearing from just different people who have literally lived their whole lives in refugee camps,
Yeah.
and how Jesus met them in their dreams, and now they're saved, and now they're navigating what this all looks like. And I'm
Yeah.
like, God is so good and really mind blowing, and how you don't even have to go and evangelize, and he's meeting people.
Yeah.
And it's, to me, it's like the God of the universe would engage in a war zone and meet people intimately.
Yeah.
Is the tension of the human, like, God, there's so much ugliness and sadness. And so I would say off my chest is, wow, I don't know anything. And yet I want to believe that God is redeeming and God is present. And also things are bad so we can see the human everything. And
Yeah.
gosh, I don't know. So that's been on my chest, as well as, oh, did my song hit 1,000 streams? The tension of life.
I certainly understand. And yeah, I think everything that you shared today was really wise. I think what you mentioned just a few moments ago about, some people feeling like they have to interject, but there's a wisdom in just taking it in and learning more information. And I think there's been a lot of strife that we've faced just in this country. If you just take the last 365 days, there's just a lot of strife that was due to maybe speaking a little too soon before we really got enough information, or one party or both parties.
Yeah.
And like I said before, the maturity certainly is shining through with your comments. And so certainly do appreciate it. We will be following you. We will be watching and contributing and streaming and downloading and investing. And I'm going to be pushing as many people to do so as well. Where can people go if they want to make sure they're staying up to date on your releases and all the new music? Where is the best place to find you?
Yes. So I have a link tree. It's linktree.com/Bethany Music. That has like all the links to, just, if you want to see a video, if you want to look at merch, because I kind of got into clothing for a hot minute and different things like that. I would say I'm really loud on Instagram at Bethany Makes Music. And Spotify is my like top listening platform at the moment, which is just all cap letters Bethany. But yeah.
You guys heard it. Thank you so much for joining us today, Beth. We will be, like I said, watching and encouraging, and we may even demand, hey, if the audience demands that you come back. After you've gotten a little Hollywood, I'm going to check that integrity.
Yeah, let me get the life under my belt. Yeah, that was all the content I had.
Well, thank you so much, Beth. Have a blessed rest of your
you.
day. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much.
Amazing interview, amazing person. Guys, please go and check out Beth's links in the description of this video. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Make sure that you stay privy to the stuff that she's going to be releasing in the future, and support her on all her musical endeavors. Before we get out of here today, I just want to read the scripture for the week, and that it comes from Psalm 33 verses 3 and 4. It says, "Sing to him a new song, play skillfully, and shout for joy. For the word of the Lord is right and true. He is faithful in all he does." So sing a new song, check out some new music. Don't just dwell in darkness, but because of God, we can rejoice that there's a future. And until God says it's over, like Beth says, it ain't over. God bless y'all. Take it easy. We'll talk next week. Peace.